Welcome, everyone, to the third segment in our series of Sound Mind. In this series, we talk about healthy, normal brain aging and also about neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. I am the host of this series, Dolores Gallagher Thompson. I'm a psychologist and research professor at Stanford University School of Medicine. And we're very fortunate to be joined by our special guest in this episode, and that is Miss Beatie Wolfe. Beatie is hailing from London, England, and she is a singer, songwriter, and has been hailed as a 20th century artist with a truly classic sound. Beatie is known for being at the forefront of pioneering new tangible formats for music. She's been described in many different ways as extraordinary by Forbes magazine, as ingenious by the Huntington Post, and as captivating by Wired magazine. So Beatie's career has taken her from being the artist who created the world's first 3D interactive album app for her debut album titled 8, to being the co-developer of a research program that's going to look more closely at the power of music on persons with dementia. So, Beatie, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I think you've done the best intro imaginable, Dolores. So, for me, you know, I grew up being totally sort of obsessed with storytelling, and as a kid, storytelling was the medium by which I did all my communications. And I guess there was a aha moment for me when I discovered that I could put stories to music, and suddenly those stories could touch more people and they could reach more people. So I think I was about 8 when I wrote my first song. And then I decided, really then and there, I wanted to be a songwriter. And so I realized I kind of had to be a singer to be a songwriter. And around the same sort of time, I remember discovering my parents' record collection and seeing these records and thinking, oh my God, it's like musical books, you know, being able to open up these vinyls and read the liner notes and, you know, look at the artwork and really immerse myself in the world of the artist. And there was something really beautiful and very tangible about that. So fast forward, you know, a good number of years, and it's time for my first album release for 8, as you mentioned. And it's a very different era. You know, everything is now digitalized. People are streaming music. It's kind of a different climate to the one that I'd grown up in. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I wanted to almost use technology as a way of preserving, you know, the tangibility, the storytelling, and the ceremony that I'd experienced as a kid, but making it relevant for the modern generation.
That sounds like a tall order.
Yeah.
You know, you're trying to bring together the past and the present and the future, because you have some very innovative ideas that aren't even really being applied yet, but we know that you have them. So I think this is amazing what you're trying to do. So how did you get interested, though, in applying music and this musical background and talent that you have to the field of dementia? It seems like a very difficult topic for an artist to deal with.
Well, it's definitely unusual. It's unconventional for a singer-songwriter to be in that space. But I guess it really came from also having these 3 core motivations. And the first was being of service in some capacity. The second is the power of one's intention. and the third is keeping the parameters open to whatever inspired me. So those three things have always sort of governed my life and influenced every decision that I've made. So I remember discovering Oliver Sacks for the first time and reading Musicophilia and reading these wonderful case studies, looking at how music can help with such a range of ailments, from Parkinson's through to autism through to Alzheimer's. And I was so deeply moved by the work that he was doing, and the warmth with which he was talking about the people that he was working with. And then never, while I was reading the book, did I think, oh, I'm going to go off and do something in this area. But then I found out that my grandmother had been diagnosed with dementia, and she was living over in San Diego. I was in London, and I thought, okay, well, whenever I'm doing regular shows in the States, I'll make a beeline for her, and I'll go and sing to her. And I would arrive, and she'd be, very confused, very disorientated, wouldn't know who I was. And after one or two songs, it was like a light bulb went on, and she was, asking me questions about lyrics, saying that I must have sworn in a song because she swore around me when I was a kid. And she was totally present and totally back to, the lady that I knew. And then I would leave and I would get emails from the carers saying, she'd been so much better after the music. So this sort of, I guess, began the seed of an idea in my head.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were inspired by Oliver Sacks, but then it sounds like you've taken it further than what he did. So could you describe that at all? Describe your process a little bit.
Absolutely. So with Oliver Sacks, as I'm sure you know, he typically used familiar music. So he used music that was ingrained in that psyche, in that subconscious. So the song that, meant the most to you, the song you got married to, perhaps. Yeah. And he would use that as a sort of trigger to bring you back into the room, to reanimate, to connect. Now, where I ended up going after this experience with my grandmother was actually into the music, into the new music category. So music that had no prior connection to the individuals who were listening to it. And this sort of came about because I was over in Portugal, and a loved one with dementia was in a care home in the north of Porto. And I decided to go and perform to him, and what was meant to be just for him ended up being for the whole ward of 150 residents. And none of them had heard my music. And actually, none of them spoke English. They were all Portuguese. So there was no familiarity in the sense of the music, but there was also no lyrical link.
Yes.
And what I was anticipating was perhaps, a nice environment at best. But at the end of the performance, where there had been lots of clapping, lots of singing along, the manager of the care home said in his 10 years of being a director there, it was the best he'd ever seen the group.
Well, that's very impressive.
Thank you.
So you've developed new music. Am I understanding this correctly? So you're not taking music that they're already familiar with, as has been done in some studies and in some care homes in the United States as well, where people have developed playlists of familiar music and given the individuals an iPod or something like that so that they could listen to it. But it sounds like you're describing something very different. This is new music. So, and it has lyrics to it.
Yes.
In English. And with Portuguese residents in a care home, even though they didn't understand the words and they'd never heard the music before, you had a positive response?
A very positive response. Very, very positive.
What do you think might be responsible for that? Do you have any thoughts about what it is about this new music and the way that you put it together, the way that you present it to people? What is it, do you think, that draws them out and enables them to be present with you?
Oh, impossible. I mean, really impossible to answer. And in many respects, what that experience in Portugal did, it led to this pilot study that we undertook. And it almost, it really brings up a lot more questions than it actually answers. But I guess going back to Oliver Sacks, he ends Musicophilia with the line, music is a necessity for those with dementia, and it doesn't have to be familiar to exert its emotional pull.
Yes.
Now, he hadn't tested that non-familiar route, but he was aware of it, and he was aware that it should be as effective. So I guess I've just, in some ways, gone down that track, from my particular experience.
Well, it's possible that the new music stimulates some of the neuroplasticity of the brain, that it allows some of the neurons that are still alive to actually fire and function and create new connections. It would be very interesting to study this in more detail. So I understand that you're working with a foundation in the UK that is actually looking at some of the science behind the music. So can you tell us a little bit about this foundation and what their goals are?
Sure. I mean, so it's a new foundation, and after the experience in Portugal, I was really convinced that I wanted to take this further. So I teamed up with the former marketing director of HSBC Bank, with a research company called 2020 Research, and with the Priory Care Group in the UK. And we conducted a research tour, which ran for 4 months. And I would go into a care home, perform a set of new music for 30 minutes. And the residents were monitored during the live performance, but then also in the weeks following as they listened to the same songs on headsets. So it was a combination of live and then playlists, but of the same tracks. And what we saw was a 72% improvement in memory, communication across that 4-month period. We had people who were virtually catatonic, getting up and dancing. We had individuals who hadn't spoken in almost a year, singing along to these songs that they'd never heard. So there were these remarkable transformations.
Yes, well, this sounds like it would be wonderful to actually see in action.
I agree.
And good, well, I believe that we have a video clip that will show us some of your work that you've been describing.
Fantastic.
When I grow up, know that I'll make my own mistakes. And if I slip up, please be the rock that doesn't shake. Don't you know we need somebody, just somebody to take our hand. We need somebody, somebody who will understand. When I grow old, please stay by me as I fade. And if I grow cold, please be the flame that holds the faith. Don't you know we need somebody, just somebody to take our hand. Don't you know we need somebody, somebody who will understand. Darling, oh, if I stray from the one that you love, darling, no, I won't drift too far from your arms. Darling, you bring me back to myself, to myself. Darling, you're that someone who will make me go on. When I grow weak, please lay by me as a friend. And if I can't speak, know that I'll love you till the end. Don't you know that you're somebody, my somebody who understands? Don't you know that you're somebody, somebody now until the end? Darling, know if I stray from the one that you love, darling, no, I won't drift too far from your arms. Darling, you bring me back to myself, to myself. Darling, know that someone who will make me live on. Darling, oh, if I stray from the one that you love, darling, no, I won't drift too far from your arms. Darling, you bring me back to myself, to myself. Darling, you're that someone who will make me live on. Darling, you're my someone who will make.
Well, this was very moving to see and very impactful on the people involved. It was so clear, you know, from when it started to how it progressed, and as they became more involved with what you were singing. It was very beautiful to watch. So I imagine then that this pilot study was very encouraging to you and that you want to take it further. So could you help us understand what the next steps are that you have planned? What are you thinking is going to happen now? What would you like to have happen?
I would like to take that study, that pilot study that gives, you know, a very positive indication in the right direction. And I would like to turn it into a world-class study that can sit on, you know, any policymaker or lawyer or accountant's desk and prove, or go as far as you can to prove that music is a necessity for those with dementia. That would be success for me.
That's a very important goal, and I have a feeling that you will reach it because you are a person who sets your goals high and achieves them, from what I can see. But I know that you've been invited to present your work at a major conference that Stanford University is hosting, and I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what you plan to talk about and present at the conference.
Sure. So I'll be talking probably in a lot more detail just about, you know, the journey that has been the last year and a half, 2 years with this project, and all of the learnings, and really going into more detail about what we're doing next. Because also something that I've noticed is, you know, there is so much potential in the tech world to do something major in this space, but they are waiting for the key that is that research document to allow them to do so. So that's why I feel like this research is so integral and it's so needed, and it's going to provide that sort of vital piece of the puzzle that's been missing. But I'm also going to be performing tomorrow, and on a sort of entirely different subject. I have a music video that I thought we could watch.
All right, sure.
That has a different story of its own.
All right, well, that sounds good. Be very interested to see it, so great, thank you.
Shall I give a brief intro?
Oh, yeah, why don't you do that so that our audience knows what they're looking at.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
So what you'll be seeing is a live recording that we did in the former home and kind of secret studio of McCartney, Ringo, Hendrix, Lennon, and Yoko. This place called Montague Square in London, which, as you know, is the name of my latest album. And we recorded the album single, Take Me Home, in this wonderfully historic room where McCartney wrote Eleanor Rigby, where Hendrix wrote The Wind Cries Mary, where Yoko and Lennon first famously got naked. And that live recording was then translated by this fabric designer into a silk fabric that reflected its geometric patterning. And that silk was then cut into a musical jacket by the tailor who dressed Bowie, Hendrix, and Jagger in the 1960s.
Oh my!
And this is a total one-off, one of one, another sort of world's first. We also decided to put NFC, near-field communication chips in the jacket so you can tap the jacket with your phone to hear the music that's woven into it.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I could buy a jacket with this musical chip implanted with your music.
Well, there's only one, Dolores.
Oh, there's only one.
But
Oh,
you
I
can,
can't buy it
You
yet.
can see it in the
Okay.
V&A sort of soon.
All right.
But for me, you know, it again draws together that whole, you know, the love of tangibility, love of storytelling, love of
Yes.
ceremony, and it just pushes the limits of that and is this wonderful synthesis.
It certainly does push the limits. So, all right. Well, I know we're all very excited and enthusiastic to see this clip.
The wild winds they weep, the night unfolds. Oh, creep beneath my sheet, evade the cold. Below, behold the rage of our burning age, and suffocate the storm with our howling song. So if the sky would crash and tumble now, and if the sun should suddenly implode, oh, I'll still be here, waiting patiently for you to take me home. Like a fiend in a cloud, I walk alone, a dog amongst those hounds, without a bone, and above a line of stars, alight my path. Please whisper something sweet, sing me to sleep. So if the sky would crash and tumble now, and if the sun should suddenly implode, oh, I'll still be here, waiting patiently for you to take me home. And those wild winds, they'll weep, home. To take you home.
Well, you certainly have pushed the envelope, Beatie. I have never seen anything quite like this in my life, but I look forward to the opportunity when perhaps someday something like this will be available to people and we'll be able to really enjoy our music in ways we hadn't even thought of so far.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with us about your work and about your future and where you see this going?
Well, I guess something rather exciting that's just come up on the horizon. Do you know Bell Labs?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So they've invited me to be the first artist to do a performance using their new human digital orchestra.
Oh my! Oh, that's wonderful.
Thank you.
That is wonderful.
And that's actually happening in 10 days. And we have, I think, a day or two of prep only. So the limits of this are hugely expansive, but I'm also a little terrified.
Well, we will be looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Yes. And thank you so much for being with us tonight and for sharing your wonderful creativity and your gifts with us. And I would like to end the segment by reminding you that this series is sponsored in part by the Stanford Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. And this center needs volunteers. We are trying to understand much more about Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's and other kinds of neurodegenerative diseases. And for that, we need your engagement. If you are interested at all in learning about volunteering, please call the number on your screen. We'll be delighted to answer your questions and tell you all about what it would be like to volunteer for our center. Thank you for considering our request.